Always online multiplayer. That statement in association with the unveiling of Fallout 76 rocked the gaming world, as longtime Fallout fans were shocked by the thought that a series full of single-player experiences would feature MMO qualities and no NPCs to provide quests and lore. Instead, the players themselves would populate West Virginia's Appalachia and interact with each other thanks to the developers' intent of a living economic system controlled solely by the community. The controversy surrounding the game pre-launch was outdone by what occurred afterwards. Underwhelming gameplay design choices, a dated engine running the entire game, and server issues. But is this just a case of people jumping on the hate bandwagon? Or do players have legitimate gripes with a game that should be another immersive experience, full of post-apocalyptic action, now with friends and strangers? I was ready to find out, even if it would take me hours to download the 50 GB update. To put it bluntly, no. Though Fallout 76 is an online experience, with the majority of the gameplay being connected to exploration with others while completing quests, challenges, and timed events, the game actually does have a story that can take the player upwards of 40 hours to complete, based on leveling and the amount of people playing together. Unfortunately, bugs and server issues ruined my playthrough, as a mission following the midway point of the story saw my character die after completing a certain objective, featuring mission-specific items. Upon respawning, the game not only froze, but also reverted back to the point where I had to recollect the items, yet the items were nowhere to be found on both the map and my inventory. With this game-breaking glitch, I couldn't complete the story without restarting everything, flushing over 24 hours of gameplay down the drain that included moving around 2/3 of the map, playing with others, and encountering a bunch of glitches along the way. Similar to Fallout 4 before it, Fallout 76 is relatively easy to get into, as the game begins with the player creating their own survivor, looking to rebuild society after the bombs dropped. Character creation is pretty much on par with Fallout 4's, and gives players a chance to make some unique looking people to enter the incredibly beautiful environment presented in the form of West Virginia's Appalachia that is definitely different compared to the real thing, but is just as beautiful. Unlike the dreary and bland color schemes seen in the majority of Fallout 4, the surroundings of 76 are bright, vivid, and varied, with areas stereotypical of Fallout experiences such as destroyed urban living quarters to toxic farmlands and fiery coal mines, though some textures such as foliage are incredibly flat. Each section of the map is unique and a testament to Bethesda's fantastic visual world building. After leaving Vault 76, the player is tasked with various quests, including the main storyline, where the search begins for Vault 76's overseer as she attempts to save the world. While the main narrative's premise comes across as a great idea, 76 doesn't have the luxury of presenting a story in memorable ways, considering the developers decided no towns would be inhabited by living survivors outside of the players themselves. Instead, every mission is started and completed by interacting with computers and robots and listening to holotapes, a tactic used sparingly in regards to older Fallout games. The stories, both main and side, are well told in terms of dialogue, but feel lifeless and underwhelming due to the way they are presented, producing one of the most boring narrative experiences of this generation. The basis of Fallout 76's gameplay is rooted in the systems established in Fallout 3, where the game takes more of a first-person shooter approach, without the nuance and tight handling of an actual FPS game. One of the previous game's benefits when it comes to gameplay was the execution of VATS, a gameplay mechanism that stopped or slowed down time, so the player could target limbs of enemies while making things easier to shoot, a necessity in regards to how the game's gunplay handles. VATS in Fallout 76 doesn't stop or slow down time, with the target percentages fluctuating wildly due to enemies still moving around in real time. VATS essentially becomes a hazard in battle if an enemy is approaching. Shooting and melee combat is just as rough around the edges as the previous Fallout games, with guns feeling loose and melee being unwieldy in both first-person and third-person views, especially when enemies glide around the screen. Easily, the biggest travesty in regards to the action is the AI. Enemies that aren't actual players prove to be a mixed bag of dumb, blind, and broken. AI enemies will easily miss gunshots, get confused when there is more than one player to confront, and even stand in front of a character while waiting for the sweet release of death. To top off the gameplay issues is a response time delay in correlation with enemies dying. There will be many times an enemy won't die upon being hit by a fatal shot, land an attack on the player, then fall over in death, after the game finally registers all of its health is gone. With the game's leveling system comes the randomization of enemy levels across the map. Instead of enemies being at certain levels in correlation with specific areas of the map, enemy packs will feature a wide range of levels, including level 5 enemies working alongside level 20 plus adversaries, no matter what the level the players are, something made worse when someone is playing alone. For all the unique enemies based on folklore, like the Grafton monster, the main scorched enemies are as dull as a box of rocks. Fallout 4's special skill and perk system has been replaced by randomized card packs, given to the player upon each leveling up, and can't be bought with real money. Microtransactions are solely attached to cosmetics such as power suit armor paint and emoticon taunts. These card packs aren't as egregious as expected, with the majority of the perks being useful even if attained at an early level, including making health kits and stim packs more effective, or gaining double the experience by being alongside teammates in battle. While the skill tree offering from Fallout 4 was more satisfying, thanks to the ability to plan and craft a character to be what the player wants from beginning to end, this version of Special mostly works. Status and equipment degradation is a big part of 76's gameplay as well, with the prior being connected to the player's need to eat and drink constantly to avoid stamina and action point loss. Weapons and armor will degrade with long-term usage that can only be repaired at workbenches scattered around the environment or in a player's base. Armor and weapons also have level limits, so potentially great items may not be used by a player until they reach a certain level, unlike in other Fallout games. Characters can attain diseases from rabid or irradiated animals, or by sleeping on some random bed to recover one's health, with diseases being cured by waiting them out, or using a rare piece of craftable medicine. Fast traveling is also available, but for some reason costs caps, instead of simply being an option for players to quickly move around the map to areas they've already visited. Settlement building also returns from Fallout 4 in the simple form of camp. Those who loved collecting junk, scrapping it, and building shelters in Fallout 4 will find everything they loved in this version. The only real issue for veteran builders is the fact gamers can't build everywhere as promised, with the player having to move around constantly until they discover their perfectly flat spot of interest. 76 also has the option of saving a blueprint of any created base to place it in another location without having to rebuild everything. Unfortunately, base specifications may not fit a different locale that the player intends to build upon, ruining the benefit of blueprints. Multiplayer, Fallout 76's biggest draw, is to a mixed bag in regards to planning and execution. Players can team up and trade with friends and strangers alike when stumbling upon them across this gigantic map. Due to the map's size, and that each available server only houses 20 players at a time, the potential of aligning with survivors and getting to know them is a rare feat. Running and gunning with people is easily the best part about the combat in Fallout 76, as it ups the excitement while producing more enemies, especially during events. While trying to complete the story or any mission with people who aren't patient makes for a frustrating experience, including other players talking as a holotape plays. PvP is easily the most disappointing multiplayer addition, as the game requires a player being attacked to violently retaliate before a battle between opponents can occur. The attacker essentially leaves themselves open for the first official shot that could end in a one-hit kill, depending on whom they're picking on, as the process of starting a PvP experience is just cyberbullying. And the loser of any PvP fight can both have their supplies stolen as well as put a bounty on the head of their killer that usually sees the player being hunted, leaving the game and going into another server. PvP is totally unnecessary in this form and does nothing to add to the overall experience. The same can be stated about nukes, as they don't affect the entire map, only certain sections in whatever server the nuclear attack happened, to spawn higher level enemies and potentially kill anyone around the blast radius via radiation. But nothing compares to the game's instability and copious glitches. Beyond the game-breaking glitch that ruined my playthrough, frame rate drops, randomly spawning enemies, and sheer moments of insanity, including enemies being stuck in the ground and objects deciding to move on their own, are the norm. Situations like broken missions due to other players completing the same mission as you forces people to quit and enter another session are likely, if not numerous. For all its flaws, Fallout 76's technical issues make this for one of the most annoying games created by a major developer in this generation. While there are definitely some interesting ideas, enemy variations, and a memorable environment, the game's problems are too large to ignore, including server and technical issues, VATS being nothing more than an auto-aim function, and a main narrative that emphasizes the necessity of NPCs in a game featuring so many RPG elements. In a lot of ways, the greatest fears in regards to Fallout 76 came true with this release. It really depends on what you're looking for from an online Fallout experience. If you want to simply run around with your friends or shoot up enemies, collect loot, and ignore the story like it's a poor version of Borderlands, then this will be a blast for as long as you have people to play with. But for gamers who love Fallout games for their narrative and exploration of various locales, potentially spawning new scenarios, interesting characters, and glitches that don't break the main quest lines, then avoid this at all costs, like someone running from a launched nuke's intended zone of impact.